You make money from verification?
Yeah.
So we can have this brief discussion. It's like, okay. First, welcome to another edition of the Osteopathic Lyceum podcast. We got Julia. Okay.
We'll talk about that after.
No, but like, what do you mean verification? Like verification?
Like, the little blue check mark?
On which
On Instagram
platform?
or Twitter or whatever?
I don't know that you make money from that. I think there are, depending on the particular platform, there's multiple ways to make money.
Gotcha.
Usually what you do is you use the platform to direct to whatever your sales location is.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Anyways, so
Off topic.
yes, very much off topic. So you have completed your thesis writing.
Yes.
Okay.
Finally.
Fine. Yes.
Yeah.
You haven't written anything of that nature in how long?
Probably like 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, despite the fact that it wasn't your favorite, was it deathly?
No, it wasn't deathly.
Okay.
It was tricky just because the time I haven't, it took me to do it. But otherwise, it wasn't too bad.
Okay, fair enough. Now, your experiment, we've talked about this before, so we had yourself and Joy on talking about the data that you'd produced, and we hadn't broken it down quite the same way at that point.
Yeah.
For you, what was the actual process like running the experiment?
Like how I did it?
Yeah, so when you were actually interacting with the individuals that were subjects, what was that part like?
Okay, so that part that was the easiest part of the experiment, to be honest, just because I was doing the same thing for every person.
Yep.
So it was like...
Which is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, which is like robotic. And I felt like my handling got better towards the end.
Okay.
So I started to notice a few more things at the end, like just like a different palpatory yield to pressure experience, I could say. I can explain it like that, I think. I think
Absolutely.
people would
Why would you
understand.
explain it how you want to explain it, especially if it's an experience as opposed to, say, something that's observable from the outside. Because
nothing was observable.
You're talking about what it was like in your hand.
100%. Yeah, and you can't see something physically, right? Like I'm not seeing a physical motion change.
Yeah.
I'm just feeling a motion change.
And just to be specific, you were doing compression of the fourth ventricle, or CV4, which
Yes.
I call the volleyball bump.
Yeah.
And everybody says they keep their hands on the occiput, but you will see thumbs on the mastoid all the time.
Yes.
And
And
also-
everyone's heads are very different as well.
And the occiput's pretty much not exposed in anybody.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of muscle on the superior nuchal line.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So it's
you
like-
don't. Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm not really sure. Like, even when you're doing the experiment, if I'm just feeling, which I probably am feeling, just more muscle tone
Sure.
in those tissues, not necessarily like fluid changes.
Yeah, so the claim is that you're able to compress the fourth ventricle in the cerebral ventricular system, stop the flow of fluid, create a vortex, and then it spins out. That's
Yes.
the claim.
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying that based on where you were and the experience that you had, you're okay with uncertain,
Yeah.
right? It's just like, I was there.
I was there.
Something happened.
Something happened.
But I don't know if
I don't
it was
know
what they
exactly
said.
even how to describe it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
And that is pretty normal for anything that's novel, that you've never done before, or that you don't have an interpretation for.
Yeah.
Right? So you're like, okay, I felt something.
Yeah.
What was it?
Yeah.
Now, if I came in and told you that it was, the sensations of string theory,
Yeah.
you'd kind of have no choice but to believe me.
Yeah. I'd be like, yeah, Sam, you're totally right.
Yeah. Now, you wouldn't say it that way initially. You'd be like, really? That's what that was? Initially. But that's a normal learning process. You have an experience, bottom up or sensory to integrator, sensory to brain, and then you overlay something on top of it. You become more likely to imprint on what somebody else that you perceive has expertise tells you. You'll imprint on that versus generating your own.
Yes.
Right? Now, the people that generate their own, based on their priors or the things that they've thought before, they're like, it's this. And then everybody else is like, it's that.
Yeah.
Because that's the cool one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the nice thing is that you can describe it as, I've had this experience. I don't know if it was what they say it was, but I had an experience.
Yes. Yeah.
Then data collection, you write it down and then you transcribe it. So that's
Yeah. So I
straightforward
wrote
enough.
everything down like on a piece of paper
Yeah.
and then I put it in a spreadsheet.
You had a data recording sheet.
Yes,
So the
yeah.
proper term, and this is, again, just so that people watching and who may be interested, you've got to have some normalized instrument where you collect the data. Now, depending on what you're trying to collect, it could literally just be a column. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Because you were taking heart rate and blood pressure off of, now I don't know if, because it's an acronym, FACEIL.
Yes.
integrated heart rate, blood pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. So the machine that I used took both for me.
I think most
and
do now, especially digital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, did you find anything about the normal variance in that particular device whereby, say, a sphygmometer that a physician uses, the variance between what that would find and what this one would find? We're just recording something. That's okay. Don't worry about it. No. Alice, would you be so kind as to help? No, don't worry. And I don't even have to edit it because we're at the Canadian Massage Conference. So this is part of what's going to happen, sitting in a hallway. That's okay. Don't trip, kid. Yeah, so I was saying data recording sheet, right?
Yeah. Data recording sheet and what the device that I was using. And
Yeah. Okay, well, whatever. I think that's okay. Pretty simple. So it's okay. Like I said, we're in a hallway, and this is going to happen. So I'm going to predict that it's possible that something else is going to happen. So
In 2 minutes.
no, not 2 minutes. This is not that
Well, it
slow.
depends if they need a break.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
10 seconds.
Yep. Look out, get out. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, just don't kick it. Thank you. This is the nice thing. So, okay, data recording. You input it into the spreadsheet, and then that's where a bunch of the formulas come in and try to spread it out.
Yeah.
So the majority of what you report is mean, and it's mean.
Standard deviation.
Yeah, mean and standard deviation.
Averages.
Yeah, so the mean
overall.
is the average,
Yes,
like
yeah.
the mean, median, and mode.
Yeah.
You didn't have enough numbers to get a mode. So mode is the number that shows up the most.
Yes.
And then the median, there wasn't necessarily a middle number. You had 20 subjects.
Yeah.
So we may not
It
have
was
had
tough because the
quite
number
enough.
of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we get that reported, the standard deviation. So with your understanding of standard deviation, a larger number in the standard deviation, what would that point to versus a smaller number in standard deviation?
The larger number would be like show more variance.
More variance,
Yes.
yeah. And then the smaller number shows
less.
tighter variance.
Yes, less variance.
Now, if my memory is serving me correctly, your experiment compared to Joy's experiment, your standard deviation was larger.
Yes, it was
right?
larger.
And
yeah.
you had some results go in the direction of either heart rate or blood pressure going up, right? Whereas we want it to go down,
Yes.
right? Or that would be
I had I think 1 or 2 subjects that went up. Yeah.
Whereas say Joy's, she had some no change.
No change.
But otherwise, everything went in the direction that
Yes.
one would want, with less variance.
Yeah.
Smaller amplitude, so smaller total size, but less variance.
Yeah.
So it's like hers is more trustworthy, but yours was more powerful.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. The CV4 was more powerful. Based on what we found, or what really you and Joy found. I say we because you're students.
Yeah.
So it's a tighter variance for Joy, larger variance for you, but yours was more powerful. So CV4 showed a larger impact on
Yeah.
heart rate and blood pressure. And the primary measure of blood pressure that we really were looking at was mean arterial pressure.
Yeah.
But we did break it out systolic and diastolic.
Yes. Yeah.
And yours, it was diastolic that looked better?
Yes.
Yeah.
See that there's donuts up right there?
I did not see that there's donuts. Donuts. Thank you, Scott. See, again, there's going to be lots of interruptions. So thank you for staying on track.
Yeah.
So the more power for you, less power in those things. The mean arterial pressure being the normalized number. There's a proper formula for it. But then the diastolic. So heart rate looked pretty good for you, correct?
Yeah. Heart rate actually did. I was surprised in the changes in heart rate. Yeah. The in the raw data.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when we look at it, say based on where your hands were, and based on the anatomy, the anatomical story that you would tell, you would sort of figure that Joy working on the cervical column and the what's the carotid thing? The bulb. What's the bulb?
Sheath.
No, not the sheath. Where the
Vagus nerve.
no, not the vagus. The one that sends the carotid body. The carotid body. There we go. The carotid body where you have the blood pressure sensors.
Okay.
It's one of the cranial nerves, and it's not there right now. I feel like it's 10. It's not the hypoglossal. whatever. It's one of the cranial nerves. Anyways, to sense, you would sort of figure that in the carotid body, you'd get more normalization, whereas you were just holding. Now, the story that many people would tell there is the vasomotor center. So in the cerebellum, the VMC, right? With modern advances in the ability to identify things in the brain, the vasomotor center isn't a thing. You remember the term, and you would have come across it in the curriculum, vasomotion, correct? Now, vasomotion, people used to think that it was this integrated thing in the brain, but realistically, it's really local auto-regulation of blood flow. That is ringing a bell,
Yeah.
right? So I squish you here, and I let you, so it changes blood pressure. I do this, and it changes blood pressure.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas if I do something to the brain, it shouldn't do, you wouldn't expect it to do that so much. So it's actually interesting, and we don't know what it means, but we see something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Like there's something there.
Yeah.
We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with what you then went out and looked at, you looked at other research talking about changes in blood pressure and heart rate through varying interventions. And what did you see there?
So there was like a mix. There was so much variance in like the research that's been done. Like some people were saying like CV4 does nothing. Basically.
Yeah.
Like there's like zero
Sure,
effect
sure,
on
sure,
people.
sure.
And then some people, it was like also the polar opposite.
It's
like,
amazing.
Yeah, it's the best thing ever. It's amazing. Yeah. So I felt like that was super interesting. Actually, that was kind of what interested me in the topic. I was like, it seems like everything's all over the place. So I kind of wanted to do my own experiment to see what I found, even if it was
Sure.
only 20 people.
Yeah.
It gives me some kind of broad base of what I saw for myself.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you see that much variance in a topic, would that make you predict that it is what any of them say, or maybe that it needs more attention?
It needs more attention.
Right, it's
yeah.
like,
and
why-
even with my study, like I wish, like I don't have a ton of subjects. Just
Well, it's normal for
I don't know
a thesis at this level,
300 or thousands of people.
or able to recruit
Exactly. Yeah. So
as an adult with children.
it would be interesting to see if I had more subjects
Sure.
to see exactly like
Yeah.
what the numbers would be in that case.
It's the power of large numbers.
Yeah.
Like you would suspect that your standard deviation might get a little tighter because you normalize over more people.
For sure,
But
yeah.
The
Also for me, I didn't separate, like some of the studies I looked at were like just kids.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like some were like the populations were different.
So the-
Mine was very broad because just again with recruiting subjects, like
So the rationale for something like that, so there's three terms. There's reliability, validity, and utility. Utility being having the skills, the time, and the money to do something. So really, a lot of times your justification there is a utility justification.
Yeah.
Time, and money.
yeah, for
Because
sure.
you didn't pay anybody.
No.
Which is actually what makes research nicer when you don't pay people, because then it's a little bit more likely to be representative of the actual population.
Yeah.
As opposed to the population that wants to get paid. So sometimes you've got to balance that out. When you looked at the pharmacological research to compare and the other stuff that came along with that, what did you see?
So that obviously has more of a benefit to like altering blood pressure.
Hardware.
Heart what?
Hardware issues. The dog.
Yeah.
And then also, exercise and things also have a strong,
Yeah.
like
So-
they change blood pressure as well. So, more so than the CV4, I would say.
You had that one meta-analysis out of the UK. What did that one show? It had the funny term in it. The secular term.
Oh yes, yeah. No, that one, the one that you were like, what are you saying?
Well, it made so just like it made no sense because I was like, this is a weird word. Like this word
Yes.
is weird.
Yeah.
Because it's like secular versus religious usually, but generally speaking, it's sort of the normal behavior of a group. It's really more an economics term.
Yeah.
And because the paper was from the UK. One would assume that the manner in which English is used there, especially in a technical sense, would have some variance versus North America.
Yes,
So
yeah.
it took me a minute, and I was like, what the heck? Because I knew that at the time that you were writing it, you were seeing the term, and you're like, okay, I think this is going to be a meaningful term, and I want to report in a way that is faithful to the manuscript that you took it from. So.
Yeah. Straight down the hall.
No, sorry. So if you're trying to be faithful to the manuscript, you'll repeat the terms that they use. So it took a minute. I was like, what the heck? So anyways,
Yeah.
secular is normal behavior of a market.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
So that one was a bigger study, and they did, and it found that like more of the medical, like prescription medication would help blood pressure.
Yeah. So the actual thing, so there's increase in the use of the pharmaceuticals. And I'm saying this because I like remembering this stuff.
Yes, yeah.
Right. So it's like increased use of the pharmaceuticals. You should see a certain type of drop.
Yes.
They didn't really see that when they analyzed the data, what they actually saw. So what did they, which one, please excuse me as I lead. So which one did more, the pharmaceuticals or the secular behavioral changes?
I think it was the secular behavior
And
changes.
like a lot more.
Yeah.
Like a lot more.
Yeah.
So just normal change in behavior in the UK across time has dropped heart rate and blood pressure. So changes in diet, changes in lifestyle.
Exercise and
So exercise and food
Yes.
has actually dropped. It has dropped blood pressure and heart rate more than the pharmaceutical would.
Yeah.
Right? The pharmaceutical cannot account for what's actually happened.
Yeah.
So there's a net downward trend.
Yeah, when you
especially in blood
compare
pressure.
both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just normal changes in diet that a population has undertaken. And you would, it would be kind of funny because you'd assume historically over time that a population would have been more active, but that's just sort of a bias that we would have, or
Yeah.
a mistaken thing that we don't know that we're making, that in the past people were more active. It's like, well, it depends on exactly when you're talking about, because what might have actually been happening is they may have been sedentary, just sitting down, and then now we're getting more active again, because depending on when you sample, you have like a primarily agricultural society, and then you have a primarily non-agricultural society. But anyways, so we see the stronger drop in just the change in behavior. So now the other thing, if we kind of get to the discussion and the conclusion, really more so the conclusion, what would you be interested in seeing from what you found to try to figure out, because you had essentially a one-time course remeasurement. So you measure before, you do see before, you measure after.
Yes.
Like immediately after.
Yes.
So to see if there's actually something meaningful, right, comparatively with this, what would you actually want to do? Right. If you had your chance to have unlimited subjects and unlimited time, what would you want to do to see how meaningful this is to somebody's heart rate and blood pressure?
Like you mean, would I alter my experiment, or
Yeah,
just
what would
take
you
those
do to the
subjects
experiment?
and do more of it? I think I would do the same thing.
So the same,
I
say the
would do
same
this
subjects.
I would do the same thing with more people.
Sure.
Same pre and post. The only thing I think I would change is like when I felt a change in my hands, I would stop and retest, right? Retest the heart rate and blood pressure.
Sure.
But
because you try to see if it was correlated to that sensation.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Whereas maybe I would time it, like literally like time it, say like 8 minutes or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like an actual time versus around like a ballpark of say 5, 6, 7 minutes.
What would the rationale? What do you think the rationale would be for waiting for change versus a time course? Now, I think from more defending the osteopathic perspective.
I think just like, I know just practicing now a little bit, like holding, like say an MFR longer, you sometimes feel more change like in your hands.
Sure.
So that would be my kind of logic behind
Yeah.
it versus just kind of, I don't know how much of it is an assumption by me. Like maybe I felt something, but like,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely.
You're also sitting there in a volleyball bump for a bit, right? Like, and people's heads are heavy. So
Yeah.
I almost wonder with my subjects, like, did I give up on some of them too soon versus like actually holding it there?
That's a pretty normal thing in any hands-on profession, but it's for you to be able to articulate that is important, because some people may feel that and not have a way to express it.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that I'm looking a little bit more in the direction of is feeling the change is when the thing should have happened.
Yes, yeah.
So the osteopathic argument, or the argument that would support the profession, is to say, well, we sensed it, so
Yes.
that's when it happened.
Yeah.
But if you do a time course, then you're normalized on a clear construct that everybody could repeat, regardless of the sensation.
Yeah.
You just do it that long. But then people would retort and say, well, if you don't stop at the change, then you might send it the other way. And it's well, why don't we find out?
Yeah.
Because the two interventions, so you could have a control group where nothing happens. You have the group where you do the intervention until change is sensed, and then you have the group that is a particular time course, and you
Yeah.
can compare the difference.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a way that you could possibly change it. Would you want to do this repeated on the same subjects over, say, 6 months and see what happens
Yeah.
to that subject?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I would do that.
Yeah.
And also, I think I would do my own control group.
You leverage Joyce.
I leverage Joyce.
I made you leverage Joyce.
Yes, yeah, because I didn't even think of the control group until I was pretty much done.
And
right?
you don't have to. And there's some degree to which, if it's novel to you, if it's new to you,
Yeah.
there's things that you're not going to come across. We're
Yeah.
not expecting the world from somebody who didn't base their life on
Research.
attempting to go into a scientific pursuit.
Yes, yeah.
Right? We're trying to get you to go through the process and know what that's like.
Yeah.
Because assessment and treatment is a hypothetical deductive process. I build a hypothesis, I test it, it either worked or it didn't work, and I
Yeah.
move on from the new place.
Yeah.
So yeah, the thing that I think would be most interesting, and it's the thing that you said in the written, which is why I'm trying to kind of poke at you for it.
Yeah.
Is if we looked at this over time, maybe we could then compare it. So we know that the intervention isn't as strong as, say, some pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
It's not as strong as in
Yeah, like
the
if
change.
we compared it to that stuff. Yeah.
But if we did it across time on the same person, what might that look like?
Yeah.
Right? Because we do see something, but we don't know how long it lasts because we only measured it, or really you only measured it at directly after.
Yeah.
What would it look like at 15 minutes? Because usually the things that you'll see, if you look in the research, you'll see it at 15 minutes, and sometimes you'll see it at 30 minutes
Okay.
post.
Yeah.
But if we did the same thing over time, then what you would actually want to see, if I thought it was working and I brought somebody in 20 times, where would I really want to see the change to be noticeable that it was likely meaningful, in the pre or in the post, if I bring them in 20 times?
Like towards the end, like in the post.
So
For
okay.
me, anyway, I would.
That's okay. Well, because you want to feel smart and special. I did
No,
it.
I
So what I'm
feel
saying
like
is,
if you did it on somebody like over, say, 3 months, and then another 3 months,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
another 3 months,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
that change was consistent, and at
now
the
where
end,
would you see the consistent change? Would you see it pre-treatment or post-treatment when you measured?
post-treatment, no?
No. This is why it's okay. Just don't worry. So if it was working,
Yeah.
so okay, day one, heart rate, blood pressure, CV4, dropped heart rate, blood pressure.
Yeah.
Treatment 2. If it was really working and impacting heart rate and blood pressure in a positive way, what should heart rate and blood pressure look like at the start of treatment 2? Should it look exactly the same as at start of treatment 1, or should it look a little bit better at the start of treatment 2?
Maybe better?
You would hope.
Yeah, you would hope.
Right?
Yeah.
So then treatment 3 and treatment 4. Say we get
Should
to
be
treatment
better.
20.
Yeah.
Heart rate and blood pressure pre-application of CV4. What do I want to see compared to treatment 1?
Better.
I want to see it better.
Yeah, yeah.
And that gives me the sense that it's consistent and
Working.
and maintained.
Or doing something.
It's
Yeah.
doing something, as opposed to every time it starts the same and it ends the same. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, well then it's only a short term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like then I also wonder like people's like what happened to that person before they came in
Yeah.
to see me.
So it's multifactorial. So okay, what were they doing
Like if
between?
somebody guzzled 3 liters of coffee and then came in,
Yeah.
their
And that's
number
why-
probably would be higher than the first time I saw them.
This is why research becomes pretty tough, because you start to have to try to manage that.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? At least gather the data, if not control the behavior.
Yes.
Controlling behavior is really hard.
Yeah.
So once you start to go across time on an experiment, it gets way harder.
Yeah.
Because people behave in varying ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you want to include that, sometimes you don't. It depends on what you're doing. But yeah, generally speaking, if it was really working to be a positive impact on somebody's life, I would want to see it step down from
Yeah.
the pre-measurement on treatment 1 and the pre-measurement on treatment 20. They should be different.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's like, okay, this is stable.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you did it on one person, you'd run the pilot on one person and figure out, this is a waste of time.
Yeah.
Or, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you have consistent health-based intervention, you start to engage behavior change for that person that they didn't know they were going to make. They're going to go ahead and say, I'm feeling better. Maybe I should behave better.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the healthy user bias? So the healthy user bias essentially is, depending on the population you study, if they are a healthier population by culture,
Yeah.
then it's like, well, yeah, of course they look better.
Yeah.
Right, or of course this intervention looks good because
Yeah.
that's a healthy population. The population, if I'm not mistaken, that they figured this out on was Mormons.
Okay.
So Mormons have within their faith rules about what they're allowed to eat and drink.
Yes,
If I'm not
yeah.
mistaken, you might know this, like Mormons are not supposed to drink coffee, right? So it's like, okay.
So that would be a population that I should find, like what we were just talking about.
Maybe, but you wouldn't.
More so
then it would be
than-
harder if you found it in a group like that had a healthy culture, and there was substances that they had to avoid because of the culture, and you found a positive impact of CV4 across time. You would actually suspect that it wouldn't look that way in the general population who will eat and drink,
Yeah, whatever.
like a
Yeah.
garbage disposal,
Like donuts,
Yeah.
like the guy just walked by and
Yeah.
asked about.
Yeah, donuts. I mean, I would eat a donut. You might have a harder time eating donuts because of a particular condition that we don't have to discuss, but whatever. Yeah, so the overall, how did the process feel?
I was a little bit confused by the whole, like, not
Sure.
the process. The process was fine.
Yeah.
But the experiment after, if I'm being honest, I wasn't expecting to find any change
Yeah.
at all. Like zero
Yeah.
change.
So you were coming into it with a "no, sir, I don't like it"
Yeah,
attitude?
yeah. I had a kind of a crap attitude going into it because I just assumed, I made the assumption that nothing was going to happen, and now it kind of, I guess, sparked my interest on
Okay.
like, okay, something happened. I just don't know what.
Did that process of going in with an idea and having something different than your idea happen, did that do something for you as a person?
Yeah, like I think now, like I think I mentioned this in a previous pod with you too. Like I think it's something that I would consider kind of integrating in my
Sure.
practice, or
Sure.
even doing more.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I know they have courses and stuff on cranial.
Yep.
Whereas before I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if I didn't do this experiment, I would not have even thought of doing cranial.
Now, based on how I have talked about cranial in your presence, had you not done that experiment and had that experience, would you be open to it the way you are, based on how I speak?
No, I would probably have the same
Yeah.
kind of. I think we kind of thought the same
Sure.
thing. Like
So-
we were on the same page for the most part in the way we both thought about cranial.
Part of it is me trying to say that I speak about it in a particular way. The thing that I say consistently is the work is good, the claims are crazy.
Yes.
So my concern is the claim,
Yeah.
not the impact.
Yeah, yeah.
But if I continue to say that and you don't scratch at it, then it could turn you away from it. Whereas now you scratch at it. Because my hope is not to turn somebody away from it, it's to turn somebody to look at it in a way that they figure out what the benefit is, as
Yeah.
opposed to what they get told it is.
Yes, yeah.
Like the benefit that I've been told about it is not the benefit,
Yeah.
right? I'm not okay with what's claimed. But the experience of you saying, you know what, I'd like to test this.
Yeah.
Now, based on how you may or may not remember the process going at the start, did I try to turn you away from examining that?
No, actually, no, not at all.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that at all.
Yeah.
Because you're open-minded
Yeah.
anyway. You're not like a tunnel
So-
vision type of instructor either.
In speaking about this way, I'm using myself and yourself as examples, but really I'm trying to point more to the process. The process being, listen, even if I don't like something, I should be willing to check it.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure. And I think initially I was looking at sleep,
Yeah.
and I think it was like a cranial effect on sleep, and I was going to do like a pre and post kind of sleep questionnaire, but it was
Yeah.
just too not objective enough. It's too
well,
subjective.
Then also there's a lot of utility issues,
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And then how does somebody know how they slept?
Yep, exactly.
don't know how I
So
slept.
it's anytime you have subjective reporting, you have an inbuilt problem.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
Because you have a preference for reporting in a way that somebody would not get kicked out of their social group.
Yes.
So their perception of how they should respond, and also many people will respond how they think the experimenter wants them to respond.
Yeah.
They feel like they're being graded,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
as opposed to observed.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because
Any
there could be all
subjective
kinds of reasons for
questionnaires.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this way, you had actually suggested doing something more objective, and that's when
Yeah.
we came up with the heart rate. And,
Because if we can find something on a more observable level, then we can say, and if it's stable, then we can start to move into the tougher things. We're like, okay, we're going to move into something like trying to figure something out about sleep, because we see that it has a stable impact on heart rate and blood pressure, which are proxies for parasympathetic function, which should move towards improved sleep.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, well, does it? Because if it doesn't, then you're like,
Yeah.
right? So you're trying to map out the edges of how things work by starting from somewhere that you can actually observe.
Yeah.
Right. So the individual example that we're highlighting in you running your experiment, that process, me being the one that's essentially supervising it, is really talking more about what could be considered acceptable scientific behavior. It doesn't have to be top level. It doesn't have to be super sophisticated and expensive. It's often better when it's elegant and basic, right? Because it's like, okay, well, we can trust that.
Yeah.
So I'm more so trying to talk about also the process, especially with you having the thought that it's not going to do anything and then experiencing something different or observing something different. That is the process. That is what's supposed to happen. That's the thing that can get somebody really engaged in it and serendipitous. It's like, oh, that was cool. Right? So prior to, you probably had no desire to do any form of experimentation or research of any kind.
Yeah.
And now, if given something that was interesting to you, would you do it again?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I would even do the same thing again, just on more people. Yeah, it's just finding the people.
Because you're engaged with that concept and
Yeah.
you're interested in it and you have some skill and it feels okay. So it's actually one of the phenomena that probably predicts people, I think, very, very narrow fields of research, because it's like, well, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
I was like, how about you do the other thing? No.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So for myself, as somebody who's running a school and requires an experiment from my students, it'll be nice over time to hopefully give myself the opportunity to guide people through a breadth of processes.
Yeah.
There are easy processes, and we could essentially create by accident like a lab type thing where we just do the same thing over and over again.
Yes, yeah.
But for some people, based on their backgrounds, their skills, their willingness, and all kinds of other stuff, we can keep it kind of tight. We can say, so you did CV4, heart rate, blood pressure. Joy did neck, heart rate, blood pressure. Somebody else could do shoulder.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody else could do hip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the rationale there is to build out the understanding, because if treating the shoulder looks like CV4, then CV4 no longer has the value that it would seem to have.
Yes, yeah.
If treating the hip has it, then it's like, okay, well, it doesn't matter where you go.
Yeah.
But it seems so far in a very small area going from CV4 to neck, it's like, no, there's a difference.
Yes, there's a difference.
Okay, what the heck
Yeah.
is this?
Yeah.
So now, if we were to build it out and say, I gave you, say somebody is going to try to treat the hip and see what happens to heart rate and blood pressure. Based on what you've seen with your data and Joy's data, what would you predict? Would you predict that? So I'm clearly sort of making it more binary, one or the other. Based on yours and Joy's data, the further away you get from the head, what do you think is going to happen to blood pressure and heart rate?
Less change.
That's your prediction. Now, it's important that you have that prediction, because then when somebody goes and tests it, either we support the null hypothesis, right, or we support the hypothesis.
Yeah.
Your hypothesis is actually negative.
Yes.
It's right. So it's like the further we go, the less it should have an impact.
Yeah.
And so that is, like, I'm actually looking for a decreasing result.
Yeah.
Whereas the null hypothesis is it would be the same.
Yes.
Or better.
Yeah.
Right? So if we can explicitly say that out loud, then people can start to understand how to build this a little bit. Over time, as the school produces more of these experiments and theses, right? I don't know if I should say it that way, but thesi. Is it of interest to you, as somebody who's gone through this process, to sort of see what that knowledge base looks like over time?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm interested to see what the new students do, and, or the newer students do, and and then what they pick as their topics, and if they're similar to mine doing the heart rate and blood pressure, I'd like to see exactly, or at least just broadly see what their findings were for sure. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
All right. So hopefully you stayed long enough to hear some of that, and thank you very much. We'll talk again soon. We'll talk again soon. English.